The courtroom was thick with tension, the kind that hums in the air before a storm breaks. Every eye was locked on the tall black man standing at the defense table. Calvin Rhodes. His hands were folded calmly in front of him, his face unreadable, but his suit was sharp, his stance firm, and his gaze never wavered. Yet, despite his composure, there was something cruel about how the moment unfolded. At the bench sat Judge Albert Harlan, a man with a reputation for being ruthless. His snow-white hair and stone-hard expression reflected decades of authority, and some whispered prejudice. He adjusted his glasses and stared down at Calvin as though he were an insect under a microscope. "Mr. Rhodes," the judge began, his voice echoing off the oak-paneled walls, "you stand before this court accused of contempt and obstruction during a police investigation. Do you have anything to say for yourself before I render my sentence?" Calvin's jaw tightened slightly. He spoke with calm conviction. "Your Honor, I was doing my duty as a citizen and as an officer of the court. The arrest was unlawful, and I stepped in because the suspect's rights were being violated." Judge Harlan's lips curved into something between a sneer and a smirk. "Duty, you say? You think you can challenge authority and hide behind moral excuses? The law is the law, Mr. Rhodes, and when you disrupt it, you must pay the price." The murmurs in the room grew louder. People shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered that the judge seemed unusually harsh. Others just watched, fascinated by the growing tension. Calvin remained still, though his eyes flickered toward the gallery. A woman, perhaps his sister, watched anxiously, wringing her hands in silence. "Your Honor," Calvin said carefully, "I have dedicated my career to justice. But justice is not blind when it punishes those who stand up for what's right." Judge Harlan leaned forward, his voice low but sharp as a blade. "Spare me the lectures, Mr. Rhodes. I've seen your type before. Men who think that because they talk well and dress well, the law bends for them. It doesn't." The words cut deep. The courtroom fell utterly silent as the judge picked up his gavel. "For your insolence and obstruction, I sentence you to 30 days in county jail. Effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Calvin's attorney rose in shock. "Your Honor, that's silence!" Judge Harlan roared, slamming his gavel again. "This court will not tolerate insubordination." Calvin closed his eyes for a brief second, steadying his breath. He looked neither angry nor defeated. Only calm, controlled, as if he knew something the rest of the courtroom did not. Two bailiffs approached, moving to escort him out, but before they could touch him, Calvin raised his hand slightly. "There's no need for that," he said quietly. "I'll walk myself." As he passed the judge's bench, he looked up once, meeting Harlan's cold eyes. There was no hatred there, only a strange kind of understanding. "I hope one day," Calvin said softly, "you'll realize who really serves the law." The judge frowned, unsettled for reasons he couldn't quite name, but he brushed it off and gavelled the courtroom to a close. The doors closed behind Calvin, leaving behind whispers and uneasy glances. Some thought it was too harsh. Others didn't care. To Judge Harlan, it was just another case. Another lesson to teach someone who, in his mind, needed to be put in his place. He gathered his papers, muttering under his breath about young men with attitudes, when his clerk, a young woman named Denise, approached with a folder. "Your Honor," she said softly, "we need your signature on tomorrow's case list." He barely glanced up. "Fine, leave it." But as she placed the file on the desk, something caught her attention. The top case file. "The People versus Tanner," it read. Under prosecution, the name printed clearly, "Lead Prosecutor, Calvin Rhodes." Her eyes widened slightly. "Sir," she said uncertainly, "isn't this the same man?" Judge Harlan looked up sharply. What are you talking about? Denise pointed to the document. The prosecutor for tomorrow's high-profile corruption case. It's Mr. Rhodes. The judge's face froze. That can't be right. He snatched the paper from her hands and scanned it. The name glared back at him in bold type. Calvin J. Rhodes, lead prosecutor, State Attorney's Office. His hand trembled slightly. The man he had just sentenced, the one he had called insolent, arrogant, and unworthy, was not some ordinary defendant. He was the state's leading prosecutor in one of the biggest corruption trials of the year, a man known for integrity and excellence across the legal community. The judge sank slowly into his chair, the weight of his action dawning on him like a ton of bricks. The murmurs of the courtroom, the reporters waiting outside, they all blurred into a distant hum. For the first time in decades, Judge Harlan felt something unfamiliar. Shame. Scene 2, 1,000 words. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed again, but this time it wasn't ordinary. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed the steps, and whispers of Judge Harlan's mistake filled the corridors. Inside, the judge sat stiffly at his bench, his usual confidence replaced by quiet unease. He had barely slept. All night, his mind replayed the previous day. The gavel, the smirk, the harsh words. And now, he had to preside over a case where the lead prosecutor was the very man he had sentenced to jail. But the twist was yet to come. The courtroom door opened, and every head turned. Calvin Rhodes walked in a crisp navy blue suit, carrying a stack of files. There were no guards, no handcuffs. His record had been immediately cleared when the truth came out, and the state attorney's office had moved swiftly to intervene. Calvin's calm presence filled the room. His gaze met Judge Harlan's for a brief moment, and the silence between them spoke volumes. "Good morning, Your Honor," Calvin said evenly, standing tall at the prosecutor's table. Judge Harlan swallowed hard. "Mr. Rhodes?" He paused, searching for composure. "I wasn't aware. That I served this court as a prosecutor?" Calvin finished gently, his voice respectful but firm. "No, I gathered that yesterday." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the audience. Calvin continued, turning his focus to his case notes. "I'm here on behalf of the people, as always. Justice doesn't pause for personal embarrassment." Judge Harlan's throat tightened. His gavel hand trembled. "Let's proceed," he managed to say, though his voice cracked slightly. As the trial began, Calvin's professionalism shone. Every argument, every piece of evidence was delivered with precision. The man he'd sentenced unfairly was now demonstrating what true justice looked like. Not vengeance, but integrity. At one point, during a recess, Judge Harlan found himself alone in his chambers, staring at the empty chair where Calvin had sat just hours ago. He remembered his words. "I hope one day you'll realize who really serves the law." When the court resumed, the tension had transformed. After the proceedings concluded, Calvin gathered his papers. As he turned to leave, Judge Harlan spoke quietly. "Mr. Rhodes." Calvin paused, glancing back. The judge hesitated, then stood. His voice softened, humbled. "I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I judged you by appearance, not by truth. I was wrong." Calvin studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "The law tests all of us, Your Honor, not just the accused." He extended his hand. Slowly, Judge Harlan shook it. Cameras flashed. The gesture spread across newsrooms within hours. By evening, headlines read, "Judge learns a lesson in justice from the man he sentenced." And though pride had long been Judge Harlan's greatest companion, that day, for the first time, he felt the quiet relief that only humility can bring. Because sometimes, justice isn't found in the gavel that strikes, but in the heart that finally learns to listen.